This is a quick tutorial on how to identify intervals. And first, you want to make sure that you can read through all of this. I'm going to go through the process of identifying intervals, figuring out the numeric distance, and then figuring out the quality of the intervals. Okay, first I'm starting with something very easy. Something in the key of C, okay? So it's very easy, no sharps or flats dealing with yet. First, I want to count the numeric distance from note to note. The first note is 1, not 0. So this note, this C, is 1. The D is 2. The E is 3. This is some sort of third. I don't know yet whether it's a major third or a minor third or a diminished third or an augmented third. But I know that it's the distance, numeric distance of 3. Then you ask yourself, is the top note within the major key of the bottom note? Is this top note part of a C major scale? Right? Our C major scale is all natural notes, right? So yes, indeed it is. If so, then the interval is either major or perfect, okay? And perfect intervals are 1s, 4s, 5s, and 8s. Major intervals, which are imperfect, are 2s, 3s, 6s, and 7s. So if you notice, the 3 is what we're dealing with. It's within the major scale. Therefore, I now have my answer. It is a major third. Okay? So our two different categories of intervals are perfect and imperfect. Now, that isn't the only thing that intervals can be. Perfect intervals, 1s, 4s, 5s, and 8s. They can be perfect if they're within the major scale, or if they're a half step smaller, they can be diminished, or if they're a half step larger than perfect, they can be augmented. That's the labeling that we use. The imperfect intervals, 2s, 3s, 6s, and 7s, if they're within the major scale, they're major, okay? If the top note is within the key of the bottom note, and it's a 2 or a 3 or a 6 or a 7, it's what we call a major interval. Now, if we have something that is a half step smaller than that, we are going to have a minor interval. Same number, just the quality changes. So it's a half step smaller. So if we have something 2 half steps smaller, it's a diminished interval. If we have something a half step larger, it's an augmented interval. And I want to do a bunch of these, but I want you to know that within a major scale, if the top note is within the key of the bottom note, and it's so important that we know our circle of fifths, or that you have one handy when you're doing these exercises so you can always look at the key of the bottom note. If it's within the scale, it's perfect if it's a 1, 4, 5, or 8, and it's major if it's a 2, 3, 6, or 7. Okay? So now I'm using a different key because I have a different bottom note. I'm going to go through the same process right here. I'm going to look at my perfect intervals and my imperfect intervals and decide which category I'm in and see if I can get my labeling correct. Okay, first thing I want to do, I want to count distance between the two notes. This is 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, This is some variety of a seventh, right? So I know that it could never be perfect. It has to be one of these things. It has to be either major or minor or diminished or augmented. It can't be perfect because it's a 7, okay? Now I have to ask myself, is that top note, that F, in the key of G major? And I know all my key signatures, right? And I know that G major is this scale here. So if it was a major 7, it would have to be an F sharp, because that's what happens in the key of G. If it were a major 7, that top note would have to be an F sharp. Since it is a half step smaller than that, I need to call this one here a minor 7. Notice that there are no flats in that. Some people think that minors have to have flats and that augmenteds have to have sharps and all that kind of stuff. That is not really how it works. So I wish that was how it works. It would make it a little bit easier to figure these things out. But it's not how it works. You can have a diminished interval with no flats at all. Okay, you can have all kinds of things that seem like they don't quite work, but you have to know your keys. You have to know your key signatures in order to be able to do these. Do another one, pick another clef maybe. Do one going down like your homework. First we'll do one in bass clef. Yeah. Doesn't look that hard. It's very, very close together, right? We're in bass clef. That is a D flat and an E natural, right? So if I count the numeric distance from note to note, it's a 1, 2. It's some sort of second. Again, I'm in the imperfect category. Now, I need to know the key signature of D flat major in order to get the full answer here. And the key signature of D flat has 5 flats, and those are the flats. It is B flat, E flat, A flat, D flat, and G flat. So if I was in this key, if I was making a D flat scale, I'd have to employ the E flat. This right here, from here to here, right, would be a major 2. Because if you're within the scale, within the major scale, all of these are going to be major, and all of these are going to be perfect. But it's not like that, right? So this actually, a D flat and an E flat sit here. If I make this an E natural, I am raising it. I am making it larger. So this is an augmented 2. Good, we'll do a couple in the perfect category. So here, I'm changing the key every time just to make sure that you guys can get around this material. First, I'm going to count up my numeric distance from note to note. It is 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. This is some sort of fifth. So I'm in this category here. The possibilities for a fifth are perfect or diminished or augmented. So I have to decide whether that F is in the key of B flat major. I know my key signatures, right? So B flat major has these 2 flats. meaning that the flatted notes in the key are B flat and E flat. So if I was to make the scale B flat, C, D, E flat, F, yes indeed, that is, within the scale, that interval is perfect. Okay, now just for demonstration so that I can get around this material in a couple of different ways, I want to show you what would happen if that became augmented or diminished. When we make an interval augmented or diminished, or we are increasing its size or decreasing its size, we don't change its position on the staff. We keep the notes in the same place. If I want to make this larger, I have to either raise the top one or lower the bottom one. I have to increase the size, right? So I'm going to raise the top one. Now this is an augmented fifth. Notice that the notes are still on this line and this line. Okay? If I was to make this a diminished fifth, I would need to make it more compact, right? So I would have to raise the lower note or lower the top note. But notice that all of those possibilities right there, they're all on the same line and the same line. And what we're changing is we're changing our accidentals when we're moving around from quality to quality. When we're moving around from perfect to diminished, perfect to augmented. Same thing over here. We're going to be using accidentals and not moving them in terms of where they sit on the staff. Okay? So some people will say, well, there's different ways to write these, right? Well, there are. There's different ways to write these. And then we would have to label them differently. So for instance, if I had a B flat to a G flat, it's no longer what we call a fifth because it's not sitting on that line there and that line there. We have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. It is some sort of sixth. And let's figure out what it is. Now, it's going to be enharmonically equivalent to this, meaning that it sounds the same. They both are legitimate ways of writing the interval. This is indeed an augmented fifth. This is going to be some sort of sixth, but they're going to sound exactly the same if you play them on a piano or you play them one by one on another instrument. Okay? Now some sort of sixth. Now I decided that I'm in my B flat major scale, and it goes B flat, C, D, E flat, F, G. G natural is the sixth that happens in the key of B flat. G natural. So if it was B flat to G natural, it would be a major sixth. But it's not. It's B flat to G flat. So it's not major, but minor. So a minor sixth and an augmented fifth are enharmonically equivalent. They sound the same. Now, in music, we do more often see a minor sixth, but sometimes a composer will write something as an augmented fifth because it will make more sense harmonically. Okay? Good. Couple going down. I think there's a few in your workbook. Making an interval going down, descending.